All right. Hello there, James Corbett of thecorbettreport.com. How are you?
I'm doing well, Vin Cognito of vincognito.com, aka Vinny Caggiano.
Yes, I'm doing well as well in the sunny climes of Venice, California.
Hmm.
Uh, and welcome, everybody, to the Bandwidth Kaleidoscope Ears. Uh, we're hoping you let us take you down because we're going to Strawberry Fields. And we're going to discuss some stuff that's actually real.
Hmm.
And that has to do with the chord progression. But first, James, as is our tradition, take it away.
All right. Well, I don't want to bore everyone to tears because anyone who actually is in the Beatles universe, who presumably are the type of people who are in a regular audience, has heard everything there is to hear about the creation of this song. So I won't belabor it, but I'll just get some of the bare bone details so we're all on the same page from the Beatles Bible. Why not? Which talks about the recording process and all of that, which I'm sure we'll get into when we talk about some of the technical aspects of this. But in terms of the writing of the song itself, as again, I'm sure Beatles diehards already know, this was written during that rare break that the Beatles took after their US tour, after their what ended up being their final tour, and before they went into the studio for Sgt. Pepper, they had a very rare occasion of having a break, some weeks, months off after actually, where they didn't have any obligations, they weren't recording anything, they weren't touring, they weren't doing anything. So they all took their little separate vacations, but John being John and unable to abide just sitting there doing nothing, he decided to sign up to star, or at least feature, in a Dick Lester film. Obviously, the director of Hard Day's Night and Help. Dick Lester invited John Lennon to star as Private Gripweed in his movie How I Won the War, which I will confess I still have not seen. And
I have
I don't know if I care to, but at any rate, while he was filming that movie, obviously sitting around in Spain, and as he famously remarked in Nobody Told Me, there's a place for us in movies. You just got to lay around because as you're waiting for them to set up the shots and everything, you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. So it was in that time that he was writing Strawberry Fields, and apparently writing it rather obsessively. It took him, as he's later said, 6 weeks to write this song, which is kind of a luxury considering how quickly they were churning out material up to that point. And so perhaps it's no surprise that it turned out to be what he later went on to say is one of the few true songs I ever wrote. They were the ones I really wrote. He was talking about Help and Strawberry Fields. They were the ones I really wrote from experience and not projecting myself into a situation and writing a nice story about it. He also, at one point, referred to it as psychoanalysis set to music, which seems about right. Um, so there's a lot to say about the writing of it. Obviously, the subject of this song is Strawberry Field, which, as again everyone knows, was a Salvation Army children's home that was near John Lennon's childhood home in Woolton in Liverpool. And it was an idyllic place in his imagination because as a child, he used to sneak into their garden, which was rather wild and untamed, so he could kind of play with his friends in frenzy without getting into too much trouble. So that was the genesis of the song. Obviously, it was then recorded in what was, to that point, one of the most unthinkably tortuous recording sessions in musical history. They spent 55 hours in the studio recording this. Can you imagine? Wow. Over the course of November/December of 1966. And of course, it eventually got released as a double A side single, Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane. So obviously, we will be covering Penny Lane next time as part of that double A deep dive we're going to be doing, but we'll start with Strawberry Fields. So that's kind of the general background. As I say, everyone knows parts of that story, I'm sure by now, but let's get into the music and the technical aspects of this.
yeah, absolutely. Man, when I first, as a kid, when I first heard Strawberry Fields, it literally scared me. It was still Beatles, and I still love them for being Beatles, but it scared me because there was all this press about LSD, and the kids are taking LSD, and it was really obvious that this song was inspired by a mind altering substance. And as a kid, I was scared of that. It was a little bit scary. Um, So yeah, what I want to first start with, and I think Matt Williams did a poll, or I hadn't seen it, but he did mention it, where he did a poll or a podcast about what constitutes a psychedelic song. And I think I'd like to throw that question out there, and I'm going to pin the question up to for people who want to chime in and say, talk about what makes a psychedelic song. As far as I'm concerned, the earlier psychedelic references, like from Revolver and other songs, um, definitely point to psychedelia. They're kind of foreshadowing, but I really think when we get here, we are immersed in the psychedelic sound. And I bring up this question because the flip side, Penny Lane is nothing like Strawberry Fields, yet it has a psychedelic quality. Um, for my mind, uh, when I listen to psychedelic music, it could be Incense and Peppermints by Strawberry Alarm Clock. It sounds psychedelic to me, and it's so hard to pinpoint what makes it psychedelic. One thing I thought about were tempos. Like psychedelic music tends to not be fast, like rock and roll type stuff. At least I can't think of anything. So that question may be pinned as well. But there are earmarks, like for example, the use of the sitar, which the Beatles explored. The use of the Mixolydian pentatonic scale, which sounds like a mouthful, but I'll describe what it is later on down the line. But to just give you a demonstration of what that Mixolydian pentatonic sounds like. All right, you could really hear that. In the Beatles, George really hammered on that particular scale type. Mixolydian in general, by the way, I mean, I once did a look down the whole spectrum of Beatles songs, and so many Beatles songs are either Mixolydian. I think almost everything on Revolver is Mixolydian. All right. If you don't know what Mixolydian means, it's the chord, the scale that produces the chords. Oh, the scale and the chords are kind of synergistic, but the scale is very close to a standard major scale, where the major scale goes. I think you know all about this, James. The Mixolydian scale goes. Okay. And Mixolydian pentatonic, I'll get into that later. So yeah, that scale comes up. The Indian instruments, the use of a harpsichord also became a thing. Uh, the Beatles pioneered this trend toward brass bands and things like this from the Sgt. Pepper vibe, so that was coming in as well. Uh, there's a vocal style, not that the Beatles employed it really, but the oh yeah, noisy alley. Uh, in John's case, there was a psychedelic style of singing, but it was his own. It wasn't. I don't think anybody much else copied that. But if you listen to the Northern California psychedelic bands, there was a style of singing. I can't quite define it. Uh, I think Neil Young did it in Buffalo Springfield. I forget the name of the song. Yeah, I don't remember the name of the song, but a Buffalo, he kind of employed that style. You can hear it. Anyway, uh, so yeah, what I'd like to do is pin the question: what defines psychedelia for you, and see what people think about that. All right, so
Can I give my response just
oh yeah,
initially here?
absolutely. I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm certainly no expert in this, and I haven't listened widely to that era of psychedelic music. But for me, what is the defining thing in the Beatles music in that era for me is the playing around with the speed, literally playing with the speed to slow the instruments down and or speed up the vocals to pitch them up, etc. And that to me is so intimately associated with their psychedelic era that
Yeah,
to me it seems like an integral part of it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know how many bands were actually experimenting with that at
Right.
the
Yeah.
point
I
that
don't know if
point.
it was a mark of the trope generally, but just for the
Yeah.
Beatles, that's what I associate with that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You can hear the sped up sound and the slowed down sound as well, especially in Strawberry Fields, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows the lore about it. We're not going to talk about it because everybody freaking knows about this as a Beatles fan.
Well,
So,
I learned something as I shared with you just recently. Yes, everyone knows that they had to slow down one of the takes and speed up the other, and magically it met exactly in the middle with the pitch and the tempo lining up. It was a gift of God. But what I did not know was that original take with the band, the brass band, and everything, the orchestral arrangement was slowed down from its original key of D to C, so that John could sing on it, and then that was slowed down again to get into the
oh, yeah, yeah. I'm
microtonal
sorry.
tuning.
Right, right. You sent me the
David
uh,
Bennett.
David Bennett, which I'll provide a link for that. It shows up later on in the video, but it's worth a listen.
Hmm.
He's a big Beatles fan, and he does all sorts of stuff with Beatles works. Really great. Right? The guy is astute, smart, educated musician. Okay, so where to begin?
Hmm.
Oh, another instrument in psychedelia, the mellotron,
Hmm. Hmm.
which I think this song is a first for the Beatles. Like the first time they actually used a mellotron, I believe. And I don't know if any other like pop acts of the time actually used a mellotron before them. But oh yeah, and by the way, the double A side, I don't think I mentioned it when we were doing what did we do? Day Tripper. Um, the double A, that's another Beatles invention. That never happened before, right? So they went that, I guess, to be equitable with each other, John and Paul, they went with the double A. So, all right, I didn't have to do much research on this because all I had to do was look at the chord progression and go, oh that, oh that, oh that, So I know I found a bunch of wild stuff here. Um, First, which may be an interesting point of discussion, is we find this chord progression. Oh, right? Just up to that, we have a C, a G minor, and an A7. Does that sound familiar? I'll play it again.
Nothing in
And
particular is coming to mind.
I have an ear for musical patterns. So I heard two songs that John wrote, and I have a theory about this. All right. First of all, Julia. Julia, Julia. So,
Mm. Mm.
and then after Julia, we have Sun King. Here come. Now, I will say this: in between the C and the G minor is a C major seven. That might as well just be a C. In the jazz world, C major seven is C major. All right, so we have Here Comes the Sun King. Same three chords. All right, so here's my idea about this. Here's my thought about it. John thought that Strawberry Fields was pretty much his magnum opus. He thought it was his best song, right? He talked about it a whole bunch that way. And I'm thinking that when he was later, like in the White Album and in on Abbey Road, he was trying to, in a way, achieve what he achieved with Strawberry Fields.
Mm.
So in other words, he's drawing on the same chord progression as an
Mm.
inspiration to try to get something just as good as Strawberry Fields. So yeah, that's my take on it. Um, yeah, it's actually, I'm looking at my note here. It took 6 weeks for him to write this, to like complete everything that he wanted in the song. Um, I It's kind of interesting because when you compare John to Paul, Paul could just knock something out in 5 minutes, but John took a very like he put so much artistic integrity in making this song good. I think he was also a bit frustrated at the production. I don't think he was completely happy with it, right? Isn't that correct? He kind of complained that it was not exactly what he had wanted.
I think the famous story is that some years after the breakup, he had told George Martin that he was interested in going back and re-recording the Beatles stuff to the way he wants. And George Martin said, "Even Strawberry Fields?" And John said, "Especially Strawberry Fields."
That would have been an interesting project. It
Mm,
really would have been very interesting, but I have a feeling it'd be disappointing. There's something about the first
mm,
making of
yeah,
something, the freshness of it. That's great.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So in analyzing this song, it's such a monumental, dense piece of music that I didn't want to go into the production value and you know, the horns are playing this and the vocals are doing that, whatever. I just tried to keep it simple. So I'm going to be talking about what I do best is analyzing the chord progression. And aside from that, in any discussion of Strawberry Fields, you're not going to get a whole hell of a lot of people discussing the actual progression. And secondly, they won't pick up on what I pick up on. So, like, I'm sure I'm one of the first guys in the world to come up with, same chord progression, Strawberry Fields, Julia,
Mm,
Sun King.
mm, mm.
Just to pin a medal on myself. All right. um, I guess let's start at the beginning. We have the intro, right? All right. And then that's the iconic intro to the song. So, what we have is very interesting. I always notice this about the chorus of the song. What we have is G, G major 7, and G7. That would wholly imply the key of G major because of the major 7. The one chord in the first chord in the key of G can be extended out to become a major 7, and it would never ever be the 5 chord of the. Oh wait, let's talk. Before I go into that, I forgot all about this, but name a key, right? Like, what the hell key is a song in, right? I used to play it in D, just because, and I think it was just for the ease of playing the melody, you know. But I think John's original intention was that it was in C, and the whole idea of bringing it down to the key of C so he could sing it kind of suggests that. So I learned it in C, and that's how we're going to go with it. So in the key of C, a G major 7 would be kind of verboten. You'd have to work your way into actually literally modulating to the key of G where it would actually work. Although I will say there are exceptions. I mean, Jeff Beck's keyboard player decided that the 5 chord, the 5th chord of a minor key, is perfectly fine as a major 7. And to me, it's very ear bending, kind of cool, but very weird. That would be, say, if I'm in the key of A minor. Instead of this as the 5 chord, he uses this. It's very, it's ear bending. Yeah.
Mm,
So it's the thing that makes dogs go, you know.
yeah.
All right. So the intro, that's what I have to say about those first 3 chords. We have G, G major 7, G7. And this is very John. G7 typically would go to C. And it does later on in the song. But here, instead of C, he goes to, to A minor, which is the relative minor chord of the key of C, right? All right. So that's a very John move. He had a distinct liking for minor chords where you wouldn't expect them to be. You could hear that in Lucy in the Sky, for example. A lot of songs.
And we can put this song on the list of songs that don't begin on the tonic.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And in fact, when I do it on guitar, I don't know if this relates at all, but and then that low note, I'm going from the 5th of the chord to the root.
Yeah,
And it almost
I
sounds like that on a record.
absolutely agree with that. It is
Yeah.
definitely the fifth in the bass. I don't know why, but yeah.
So G7 to A minor is slightly unusual. It's not unheard of, but it's slightly unusual. The expected chord would be C. And then when we finally, then the song begins. So incredible. That
It's
simple little.
it's it's giving me, it actually makes the hairs on my arm stand up. It's so incredibly beautiful. I have no idea why.
Yeah.
Explain it.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I could explain why beauty has an effect like goosebumps and things like this, but beauty, that's the big mystery of music. You could make something that's so beautiful and you don't know why. You don't know why it's beautiful. It's just some chords, right? Some melodies. Like, what is it? And that's the wonderfulness of music itself. I think. I love being a musician. I just love being a musician.
Well,
All
then
right,
explain it. What is happening? Why? Why? What moves is he making here?
all right. So again, we have the to the C to G minor passing note, then the A chord. Now, that's all right. Let's talk about the G minor first. All right, G minor to A7. Now, in a minor key, let's say the key of D minor, A7 would be the 5/7 chord that goes to D minor. And the 2/5 in a minor key is usually minor 7, flat 5, 5 to 1 minor, right? Now, he has G minor going to A7. And you hear a similarity between this and this, right? Very similar. And why? This E minor 7 flat 5. If I take the E off, I have a G minor triad right there. So there's my G minor, right? All right. So that's one of the reasons why the motion works so well. Of course, John didn't know that, but that's why us music theory guys come along and say, this is that. Now, wow, the first moments of this song, like you say, it gives you goosebumps because it's so amazing.
There's
Now,
some note in there that I find interesting. The I don't know why, but there's some note there that's making
I'm
me.
going to explain why you find it interesting because it's way advanced. Okay.
Hmm,
Um, I remember whenever I've played this song, I remember having a hard time singing that part of the
hmm,
melody.
right.
Here's my A chord. I have to start on B flat. Da, 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 da. Well, what that is part of, there's a few things that go on. First of all, he definitely plays A7, but I think George Martin turned it into a diminished. All right, because what this melody is outlining is what's called the diminished scale. Right? So we get, and that jump is a tritone.
Mm, mm,
So that also, like, whoa.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, wow, that's way cool and way interesting. It's very advanced, and John, of course, didn't know this, but somehow instinctively that kind of scale is used in jazz.
So does making that diminished, does that take it out of the key?
All right, if we're thinking of C as the overriding key, right? I'm going to talk about A later on, but see, if this was like a jazz song, right? It'd be like C major 7, 2/5, and it would go to like say D minor. All right. Um, let's see. Where does he go after? Uh, all right. All right. That A. All right. It's in what I I think of positions when I think of what are called secondary dominant chords and tritone substitution chords. This chord is in the position of a secondary dominant, but is not functioning like one. All right. Where it really comes from is the parallel relative switch, where I'll get to that in a moment. All right. So, how does A7 go to F? Now, maybe you're hearing the parallel relative switch, though. Right?
Mm.
See, this is the thing about the parallel relative switch theory. It crosses over the European rules and does something different than the European movement of chords will do. That's at least my vision of it. I have a vision that all the elements of jazz that do not contain blues are all European, and that includes tritone substitution chords, secondary dominant chords. But as soon as you get like a sharp 9 chord, you're using blue notes, things like this. Now the blues comes in, and also chords that are in the place of what are called tritone substitutions. I know I'm going over people's heads here, so I won't continue on that. But I see a distinction between European harmony and blues harmony, and sometimes there's an overlap between the two. Is what I'm trying to say. All right. So the A7 is not functioning like it would normally do, which is to go to D minor. Now, you could stretch the idea and say, well, D minor contains 2 notes of the F chord. Here's an F, here's a D minor. So maybe it's kind of a deceptive cadence. All right. But when I hear it, I'm hearing parallel relative switch stuff there. And I will go deeper into it later on as we continue. So we have, and then we have F back to A, and then F major 7. Gorgeous. I just want to play it through once again up to that point. All right, so notice the A is coming back, right? Nothing to get, and then the F is coming back. Strawberry fields forever. All right, now what I want to do is throw up. Can I screen share here? Yeah, I can. Okay. So here's a funny thing about the parallel relative switch. Okay, the original key, if you were dealing, this is going to kind of screw a little with the way you think, James, because we're not starting with the umbrella key. We're starting with the switched key to begin with. So we're in the key of C major, basically, right? Right. But when that A major comes in, that's referencing there to the key of A major. Okay. So what we have here is a kind of trick. All right. What we have here is we think we're just going along in the key of C, right? And then suddenly the chord from what would have been the umbrella key, which never shows up until then, surprises you. To give an example,
I am only just now understanding this, but yes. All right. So we have A major. The parallel is A minor. The relative of A minor is C major. So
right.
What we were thinking was the root key is in fact actually coming from the switch from the actual root of A. Okay, I get it now.
Yeah, and A major is the key of A major is so overpowering to see that it accepts it. So I'm going to do a demonstration where I'll just throw together a bunch of chords in the key of C, And then to show you how dramatic the switch to the umbrella key is, I'm going to end the progression on an A chord, right? So, and now I'm going to end. It sounds like a Picardy third. All right, so yeah, you know, in order for kind of non-music theory people to understand this, they'd have to go way back into some of the explanations I made about the parallel relative switch and all like that. But that's the long and short of it, that A major can function. In other words, you can write a song in C, never thinking about the parallel relative switch, and then suddenly jump there, and you'll get like a very interesting tonality out of it. So that's that point. Yeah, so those are a. It has a very pleasing feeling, by the way, right? And then it just introduced once, and then when that F chord comes in, we get a plagal cadence from 4 to 1 or F to C. All right. Now we just have when we go into the bridge. Again, it's like the intro, but not exactly. It has the first 3 chords of the intro. So it almost sounds like we're jumping to the key of G because of that G major 7. But then we go to a C, where in the intro it goes to A minor. Well, maybe it goes to C. I'm not sure about that. It might. I have C written, but I have a feeling it might be A minor. But I'll use C. It does. It's kind of 6 of one, half dozen the other. They're again, A minor has 2 notes from the C chord. C major has 2 notes from the A minor chord. So we'll leave it at that. I'm sure somebody.
Don't worry, someone will correct you in the comments.
Damn! I should have looked into that before we started. Damn. Okay. I've been running these. I think I mentioned a few podcasts back. I'm starting to run these the way I used to with that guy Steve Anders. It's just kind of like a song gets named, I start riffing on it. So likely there will be some minor errors here and there. So forgive me for that. I'm going to use C because that's how I practice it. But now. Sorry. How's it? Oh, yeah. And it's not. See, there's a bass movement I'm trying to do, right? So, and actually, I'm right. It is a C because we have to walk down to A minor.
Right.
Yay! All right. Yay. So, when I do the chord melody, it doesn't quite capture it right, but and then we're back around. All right, so what we have there is G major 7, G7, and that brings us back to C, which is what we're waiting for. And now we go, if I were to just purely play the chords, misunderstanding I see. All right, so we're missing a whole lot when I do that, right? Now we have that in between chord. And it's likely he played a B over C because it's a very, very common move on guitar. So this is C with a B bass, aka C over B. Uh, another moving line, diatonic line. So that gives us constant sense of motion as we're moving through the chords. And then it kind of ups the ante on the next one. Which that kind of move also happens in Yesterday, right? So, and what that's doing is outlining the C scale, descending from the C note. So we put a C under the B, and then to get the A note, we just go directly to A minor. And then to get the next note, we put A minor 7 or a G, A minor over G or A minor 7, and F, right? So now, all right, now I was wondering if there's this is kind of a deceptive, what they call a deceptive cadence, okay? Which means the chord we're expecting to hear is replaced by another chord, okay? And that's usually evidence in a 5-to-1, but it's also could be 4-to-1. So after matter much to me, that would be the expected cadence, right? But what he does is he keeps us hanging on because that note is also in the F chord. So he plays an F chord instead of a C chord there. Doesn't matter much to me. And that's the Amen cadence. Amen, the plagal cadence. All right. Now, let me see if there's anything I want to discuss else from these chords. I mean, it's actually when we get to this section, it's there's a lot of the walking diatonic lines, bum, 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 bum. But aside from that, it's not a whole lot to write home about. There's no surprise chords in that particular section. It's the verse that's very, very interesting. Now, what you said earlier, okay, reminded me of a thought that I had because of the Beatles, that if you have a great song, right, a truly great song as it stands alone, you bring it to the studio, you fluff it up with all these effects, as happened with Strawberry Fields, you still have a great song. It's just hiding somewhere in there amongst all the fluff. And it so happens that the fluff on Strawberry Fields is great anyway. So, you know.
Well, as you point out, I think you're pointing out the part of the melody that we're hearing there is actually coming from the orchestration, presumably written by George Martin, right?
Yes, in fact, I think George had a lot to do with the diatonic movements jumping through the chords.
Right?
Yeah.
But okay, I'd have to go back and re-listen to the original acoustic demo to see how much of that John actually was playing.
He might have. I think he did the passing G, did a couple of them, but I think George Martin
fleshed it out.
I think that was George Martin. Yeah. I might be wrong. I mean, John was a lot musically smarter than I tend to give him credit for. He really just comes up with these surprising things. But anyway, what you said when I first played the melody, you said, I'm getting chills just hearing it, right? That's me on a crappy, cheapo acoustic guitar with worn out strings that I should have changed years ago, right? And yet the beauty of the song comes across, right? So it's kind of the reverse of you can't polish a turd. It's like, this is a great.
You can't turd a polish. Yeah.
Right. So my idea was that if you have a great song, it will stand alone with one guitar and a voice, and that's enough. That's really enough. I think Bob Dylan proved that many times over. But can't polish a turd. It's very applicable to today because when I listen to a lot of boomer talk here, when I listen to a lot of music those kids are writing these days, there's a lot of turd polishing going on with this stuff. You if you break a lot of these songs down to just a guitar and a voice, it's like ho hum. You know, the brilliance of the chord movement we see in here, you'll never ever find.
No,
You know.
no, it is brilliant. May I ask about a certain particular part of that that we may have glossed over there?
Yeah,
Specifically, the
sure.
refrain, Strawberry Fields Forever. Obviously, interestingly to my ear, is a time change, right?
Going from, I'm sure there's some subtle time changes in the song. I wouldn't doubt it. But you're talking going from the
When it
verse
gets into the
to the
strawberry
bridge.
fields forever, I interpret that as a change. Strawberry fields forever.
Oh, let me think about this. Strawberry fields forever. One, two, three, one. Yeah, it's a bar of three. Let me double check that. Where am I? Is it in the verse? It doesn't. Oh, sorry. Strawberry nothing together about 2, 3, 4 strawberry fields forever. Yes, it's definitely a measure of three. Yeah.
Or, well, could it be 6/8? Is there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Yeah, you could think of it that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
you could. But
Anyway,
on my
at
flip,
any rate, it does change there at
yeah,
the same time that you get the refrain, Strawberry Fields Forever, which is done in a very sing songy, almost, I would say, nursery rhymey kind of way.
yeah, yeah,
And that contributes, I would say, to the overall sense of what we're going for here, which is some sort of childhood nostalgia reminiscence
totally.
vibe.
Yeah, he's doing it with this, and Paul did it with Penny Lane. It
Right?
was,
No.
and from my experience, from having taken quite a few LSD trips in my life, I will say that I don't know. It brings you this kind of raw existential experience of reality. It's like it's scary, and but when you face it, it's profound in some ways too. But I've noticed that uh, it gave me a longing to go back to childhood. I think part of it too is because on acid things become exaggerated. You know, like if you look at Yellow Submarine, in a way you could say this is the way the world looks in a child's eyes. It looks all kind of balloony and colorful, and like a little toddler. So I think that acid actually caused people to want to revert to childhood, or at least remember those things. That's one of the qualities. Another quality of LSD, which is really awesome, I call it a love hangover. Whenever I took acid, I woke up the next morning and suddenly I just loved everybody. It was kind of like medicine for the emotions. It's really kind of cool. All right. So I think there's one other point, and that is the Lydian pentatonic. And I was going to write out a chart about it, but then I thought, well, it's like my parallel relative switch charts is going to fly over people's heads. But I'll try to explain this. I've done it before, James, as you know. Um, First, I have a G Mixolydian scale, which is like a standard major scale, except the T to Do is flatted. So we get rather. All right. So now the formula for a minor pentatonic scale uh, is 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 1. Now, in a minor pentatonic scale, 3 is flat and 7 is flat. These two notes are mutable when building chords. In other words, when I have a C major chord, if I flat the third, it becomes a C minor chord. That kind of option to change the chord happens less on the fifth and not at all on the root, because you're just changing the root altogether. The same thing with the 7. All right. I could either have a C major 7 or a C7. So we're going to say, well, since the root is mutable, we're going to take the formula for minor pentatonic, which is 1 flat 3 4 5 flat 7 1. I just call it 1 3 4 5 7 1. Now, when I take the Mixolydian scale and I take 1 3 4 5 and the 7 is flat, that's the sound I get. When I play, I have a version of back in my novel cafe days, I did a version of Within You and Without You, and I dropped in Tomorrow Never Knows inside of that, like as a quote. But I was doing all this. And I was doing this kind of to give it the sense of an exotic instrument rather than just a guitar,
Yeah.
So when we hear, I forget the name of the Indian instrument that George picked up. I don't know if you remember the name of it. To get that,
Not off the top of my head. Yeah.
That should be recognizable to anyone who knows the song as a break,
Yeah.
and then beautiful sound at that moment too.
The Swar Mandal.
Swar Mandal, yeah. So that's the scale that they use. Again, it defines a kind of psychedelic sound. It's a bona fide Indian raga. I mean, the sound is used in India. I think one more thing. Or did I talk about the deceptive cadence? One more thing is talking about the deceptive cadence. I want to go into that, and then we'll be under an hour. All right. So. Wait. I think it comes up here. I did talk about it. Instead of going to C,
it goes F to C. Yeah.
Right, and that's a deceptive cadence.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the ending too. So we have strawberry fields forever. Strawberry fields forever. Strawberry fields forever. And then, whatever it is that they do there. So that, in a way, is deceptive because twice through it resolves. Strawberry fields forever. Strawberry fields forever. Strawberry fields forever. And that's kind of nice, like letting your ears hang on to that. And of course, after that is just the weird drone psychedelic reverse drums and everything else, reverse vocal. It's just truly a work of art. Truly a work
So
of
the
art.
outro is just a drone. It's not actually changing chords.
There's no chord changes in it. Yeah, it's just and all that layered stuff that they do. It's funny. I was on Reddit today. I'm on a R Beatles Reddit and subreddit, and some guy says he goes sincerely. I have to ask this question. He goes, "What makes the Beatles so special?" He goes, "When you look at," he talked about Louis Armstrong and Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley. What puts the Beatles in that category? And I'm thinking, dude, you don't get it. And he said, like he admitted he's not a fan of the Beatles. I just said to him, look, man, you're well within your rights to express your taste, and obviously you don't like the Beatles, so why you even bother to bring this up? Nobody's going to change your mind. They're going to make you like them by talking about the Beatles' legacy.
Like I could imagine someone not liking Louis Armstrong, but to not acknowledge the incredible change in music that Louis Armstrong represented would be just ignorant.
Louis Arms. That reminds me of I was on a jazz subreddit, and I got so excoriated from some guy, some rando. Uh, there was a question, like somebody asked it. It was kind of an interesting question. They said, if there's no improvisation in a jazz piece, can it validly be called jazz? And I related the story of my back in the '90s. My buddy Dave, uh, he was a sound engineer. He went on tour with this Japanese band called T Square, and he called me from Japan and said, "Man," like his first night listening to them, he goes, "Man, these guys are great. They're so hot." And then a week later, he goes, maybe they're not so good. They don't even solo their own. They just play. They write their solos. They don't improvise whatsoever. So I happen to say this is not jazz. And man, some guy just got on my case about that. But you need to know, like literally, he capitalized the word "you," and just it was like I was going to write back, but I figured, what's the point? Uh, yeah, and I was educated by his post because I didn't know this. He told me that Louis Armstrong pre-composed a lot of his solos, and he actually mentioned a few jazz artists who wrote their solos. So can't argue that. Wild.
Uh, if you're going to argue that Louis Armstrong isn't jazz,
Yeah, no, I would never do that.
I will sit back and watch watch
Oh yeah,
the turds fly in the comments.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Louis Armstrong wasn't even playing jazz.
I wish you
Anyway,
knew.
to go back to your original insight into this, which was that when you heard it as a child, it scared you in a way. It evoked something. I think the obvious reference is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it is sometimes attributed that Brian Wilson, when he first heard this song, was driving around and heard it, I guess, on the car radio, and was so affected by it, he pulled over his car, broke down in tears, and said, "They got there first." Now, I have alternately heard that about Day in the Life, so I'm not sure, but one of the stories goes that it was about Strawberry Fields Forever. And anyway, it seems plausible that this might have been contributory to Brian Wilson's breakdown. I think in a way, but yeah,
I,
it has a profound emotional effect and impact, and as well, if you were being competitive with the Beatles at that time, I think this is the point at which you realize you're not going to win that fight.
yeah, it's kind of sad in a way because Brian Wilson did take his competition with the Beatles very seriously, you know, and I do think it contributed to his breakdown. I do. Um, it's kind of sad, and Paul didn't do him any favors by taunting him.
Mm.
I mean, he flew out to L.A. and showed him a day in the life, and then she's leaving home. What are you going to do? You know.
Mm.
So yeah, it scared me because it was really more adult music in a way too.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
you would have been a young boy at that time, still.
young boy, like 8, 9,
Yeah.
something like that, maybe 10. You know, but it was really something to watch the arc of the Beatles.
Mm.
As a kid on TV, always it was on TV. And to see the changes they went through was just so remarkable.
It's one of those things that we tend to look back at pictures of people from the 60s or whatever, and they're 21 years old, but they look like a 37-year-old man. So, but in that era of the Beatles, yeah, you get to see them from the little fresh-faced young up-and-comers from England to becoming bearded, grizzled old men by the time they're like 29.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
quite the
yeah,
transformation, and this is obviously part of that turning point. In fact, of course, the point where they all famously sprouted their mustaches.
yeah, yep, yep. Yeah, just wow, gotta love the boys. Gotta love them. All right, well, I guess that's about it for the show tonight.
Under an hour. Can you believe it?
And can you believe it? Well, that's because I didn't really work hard on this.
To be fair, as you say, everyone has talked about every possible aspect of this song except the chord progression. So
Yeah, yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, well, that's my stock and trade, man. That's my gig. All these other guys, the Rick Beatos and
Hmm.
David Bennett's, they do their own gig. You know, this is mine. I like looking at chords and see how they move. You know.
Cool. Well, then let's do it again next time with Penny Lane.
Yeah, that's yeah. I I I so adore that song. It's in fact it's one of my top favorite Beatles songs. I know you don't feel the same way. I know you like it and appreciate it, but certainly it's not in your top, right? Um, but
I think growing up, I would have said Strawberry Fields would have been my top. I don't know what I would say at this point, but it's still up there.
yeah, yeah. I just love the fact that well, you know, when you listen to these both of these songs, to my mind, you hear colors.
Mm.
I they evoke colors to me, and that's what I loved about psychedelic music. It just had a colorful quality to it. You know. All right, so yeah, I've covered everything I could think to cover. Um,
Okay.
Anything else would have just gone into the lore and the recording process and all that stuff, and everybody
Sure.
knows about all
Yep.
that. You know, I
All right.
remember.
Let's leave it there.
Pardon?
Let's leave it there then.
Yeah, let's leave it there. And yeah, the next one's going to be Penny Lane. I'm looking forward to that. I like analyzing that song because it's very interesting chord movement in that. A
Mhm.
lot to talk about in that particular one. So, and so good night, everybody, and good night, James. And we'll see you next time around.